Welcome once again to another For Your Consideration. This time I'm in charge. My name's Michael, and as always, my fellow co-host is...
Hello, Michael in charge. Yes, it's Luke here.
Yeah, I'm not used to being in charge. I'm not good at it. It's not really me. Right, so, as you know, For Your Consideration is usually I bring something, we chat about it, you bring something, we chat about it, and then we hit Red Dwarf, and we both love Red Dwarf, so we decided to split it into two different shows, where I would talk about Red Dwarf this time, and last time we spoke about two stories that mean something to you. So last time we did Thanks for the Memory and Samsola, which I can never pronounce.
Samsara.
And today we'll be discussing my take on Red Dwarf and my love of the series and my history with it, as well as two stories that mean something to me. The first one, Waiting for God, which is Series 1, Episode 4, and also one that I saw live, because we discussed one that you saw live. Mine is Justice. There we go. So
yes, so I'm intrigued to hear what your experience in the studio was like.
Well, you have to remember that my memory is shoddy. But, yeah, so my stories aren't exactly the same distance apart as yours.
No, that's true.
Because I've got, I've written it down. March 88 and February 91.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a bit of a jump because, sorry, I just need to say happy birthday, Luke. Because last time when we recorded, it wasn't quite my birthday, and your birthday was coming after mine, and then we've sort of skipped a few weeks, and we missed last week. So I've had my birthday, you've had yours.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes,
was it
yes.
a
I
good
think the
birthday?
the last time we recorded, and then the last time we released an episode was between our birthdays. But I think the last time we recorded, we had neither of us. Yes, it was. I mean, I was on holiday. It was as I say, I was on holiday. I was off work because it was the Easter holidays. I was fortunate enough to take the whole fortnight off.
Nice.
To spend time with my children. So yes, and then a friend of mine who always has a birthday party for his birthday, which is later in April, but he always has it during the Easter holiday. He had his he does like board games on the Friday and then a LAN party on the Saturday.
A what party?
A LAN party.
Nope. What's that?
A LAN, as in local area network.
Oh, so, yeah, sorry.
Basically, people pitch up
at his house.
Everybody
plugs in their computers into a big
everybody
cable.
turns up at his house, they build a network for the weekend and play whatever game. Anyway, so on my birthday, I was round for his birthday doing board games.
Nice.
And then the following weekend, I had a party for me doing more board games. So anyway, I'm now 40. You are
52
something, 52. We're all a little older. So I guess that's my first question, right? Because I was 4 when Red Dwarf started, so I caught up with Red Dwarf later in my life.
Yeah.
You would therefore have been, 16?
16. It's my GCSE years.
You would have been prime audience for this show.
I absolutely was.
How did you hear about it, and were you watching from the start?
Yes and yes. Right. I was definitely watching it from the start. Episode 1, sat down. Now, my memory is cheating. I've not bothered doing any research, as is my want. And I've got a memory of it being probably a Friday night. Definitely BBC 2, because there was only 4 channels. And it was because obviously, hey, you're a Doctor Who fan. You'll watch any sci-fi that's on TV, and then you'll go, right, I'll sit down and I'll watch this, and I'm like, oh, it's a comedy show, and it's not Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's not more lowbrow, but that's kind of how it's pitched to us. And then you go, I get this because it's working class people in space, which I love. And it was literally unlike anything else. And I was prime target audience. Right, okay, so I'm 16. It's my GCSE year. This is the year that I'm reading The Watchmen instead of doing any revision. Yeah, that's really not a good way. And I'm doing things like building a Judge Dredd helmet in an art class. That's the kind of absolute geek that I am at this point.
Just to butt in, I've just Googled the 15th of February 1988 was a Monday. So the first series was on Mondays, apparently.
Prime slot.
Mm.
Well, either way, I remember watching it. I remember watching it in the living room. I remember sitting in front because I'm pretty sure we taped it on VHS, which means we just got our VHS machine because we had Betamax before that. And the Betamax system was you could see it on the screen. You could see how much more superior the picture quality was. It genuinely was, but our video rental shop just didn't have Betamax in to hire. So we did that. So we did have the VHS and the Betamax, so I could copy one to the other. If we hired a VHS from the shop, we could go into a Betamax for backup purposes. So we could, because the Betamax didn't die for years. It's we didn't have. So I remember doing that. So we taped Red Dwarf on VHS just to see what the quality was like. I remember that. Because the machine it didn't sound as hefty, as well built as the Betamax. I remember that. So yeah, I remember sitting down and I remember absolutely loving episode 1. In fact, the whole of season 1 I think's pretty damn strong.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so let me see. You know not the elephant in the room. It's not the elephant in the room at all. But one of the things that needs to be dealt with is that a lot of my choices are going to be based on religion and not mocking it, but looking at it in a different way. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how my head is wired. So this spoke to me, and that's why I chose Waiting for God, because this specific story speaks very clearly to me as a person. So that was why I went with that. So that was my love of Red Dwarf. Just kind of, I experienced it. It was on. Now, running parallel to all of this, go back a few years. Natural born geek, brought up on black and white films, the BBC Two, watching the sci-fi movies on at 6 o'clock in the evening, the Star Treks, all of that, right? Shared a lot of it with my dad, same as you did. So we're going through life. Dungeons and Dragons, I'm playing that with my friends at school. I keep playing while they kind of go off and do different things. So I join, first off, a Blythe-based role-playing club that met on a Sunday. It took an absolute age to get to Blythe because we had to travel on the 308. And the 308 bus actually left North Tyneside and went to Northumberland. This does make sense. This club was miles away, and it was in the middle of it was a stupid trek.
I was going to say, is it just this was the closest local club that you could find?
Exactly. So eventually somebody formed another role-playing club called Warp, Wall's End Adventure Role Players. I have no idea if it's still going. This is 40-odd years later. But you know what? These people had staying power. I've been scared to look it up, okay? So, Games Workshop was selling games that weren't just Warhammer, and we put a little sign on the wall in there and in Time Slip, and then people joined. Okay, this does link with Red Dwarf. So,
just to scare you, Michael, I've just Googled it, and warp-club.com, the Wall's End Adventure Role Players, formed in the late 80s and still going strong today, according to their
Fantastic!
website.
I am so pleased that it's still out there. Oh God, that's really made my night knowing that it's still going out.
I say that the most recent thing they have is something from 2018. So maybe
maybe's not.
Maybe it's not running. I don't know. But anyway, so
we go from Blythe to Wall's End Adventure Role-Playing. Now I'm from Wall's End. It's not far. It's at this point that I meet my best friend in the world, Andrew Richard Barber. Right now, he's a few years older than me, and he is the one thing that I hold very high. He's hilarious. Okay, and the one thing that we laugh so much during the games, Call of Cthulhu, Golden Heroes, the works. We laugh so much that we're actually banned from playing games together because we have to play games with other people because we're just constantly taking the piss. Saturdays
Brilliant.
are spent together in each other's company. He's a massive Doctor Who fan as well. He's the person who I watched Rose with eventually years later. This was a lifelong, ongoing friendship that was formed at the Wall's End Adventure Role Players. And one of the things that we bonded over was Red Dwarf. We absolutely loved it. By the time of season 2, we were like, is there not a Red Dwarf fan club? There must be a Red Dwarf fan club. There's got to be one. Why isn't there one? Season 3 was rolling around, and we're like, look, we'll write to the authors, because that's what you do when you're 17. You go, I'll write to the authors, and we'll see if there's a fan club, and if there isn't, can we form one? We get a letter back. Now, I haven't got the letter. Andy had it, and he's long gone now. So we get this letter saying, if only you'd written to us 2 weeks earlier, somebody else has asked to form the fan club. His name's Nick Ferrari, I think he is. Or something like that. Like I said, memory's cheating. Because he's doing the fan club now. And we were like, oh, okay. So we made contact with this guy, had a little bit of an exchange. This is pre-internet, pre-everything. I think we put an advert in TV Zone. That's what we did. This is important. We put an advert in TV Zone saying, do you want to join the fan club? And then eventually what happened was we had all of these people, about 50, 60 people had written to us from this £5 advert in the back of TV Zone. And some of them were just like, people just put their name and that was it. But one person had actually written a letter, and that was who became my friend Catherine. We started writing to each other at that point. So that became a sort of long-term ongoing thing. So Red Dwarf, as well as Doctor Who, was creating friendships and expanding my horizons and my world. So, yes, that was it. So what I do is I get this big pile of membership cards and I give them all to this guy called Nick, and he takes over that end of things, and that's it. To be fair, I think I'm in the fan club for like 5 minutes. And then that's kind of it for me. I'm like, look, I'll just watch the show. That'll do me. I don't need to partake in this thing. And I'm sure there'll be conventions at some point. Not that I'd ever been to a convention. Oh, no, I'd been to one Doctor Who convention at this point. And I think I went to that when I was 10.
I'm going to say, Michael, that sounds like, at the time, probably unknown to you, but you doing an ADHD thing.
Yeah.
Where you had a hyper-focus that was like, I want to start a Red Dwarf fan club. And then it was accomplished, and you were like, "Oh, done that. Move on."
Yeah. You're very, 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 very right on that one, and that is a pattern that has totally been a thing in my life. It was like, oh, I want this to exist. It doesn't exist. I must make it exist, as opposed to everyone else who'll just go, oh, does it not exist? Fair enough. I must create this thing. This thing must exist, and I must be it, and it must be the sole focus of everything, despite the fact that I've got considerably more important things to be getting on with my life that I should be focusing on. But no, yes, you're so right. Okay, right, now, Nick contacts us the next year and says, oh, do you want to come and see the filming of an episode? My mate Catherine, who I'd not actually physically met at this point, also gets the same invite, and we all go to see Justice filmed.
Right.
And that's when I think I meet Catherine for like 2 minutes and just go, hi. And it's like, hi, that's it, really, because we're focused on the actual filming now.
Yeah.
So me and Andy, we go down on the non-stop Clipper from Newcastle, which is a coach, which goes all the way and from Newcastle all the way to London. We get off in London. Nick picks us up in the car. We drive. He drives, and I'm looking over his shoulder, and I'm pretty sure he touches 120 miles on the M20, 120 miles an hour on the M25. I'm absolutely terrified at this point. Okay. Me and Andy end up sleeping on this guy's floor. Oh no, that was it. So we watch the episode filmed. We go back to the guy's house, we sleep on the floor, and then we travel back, I think, overnight. I don't know. There's something going on. There's definitely a point where we sleep on this guy's floor, because about a year later, Andy comes out of the closet as gay. And I think apparently my reaction was something he used to tell people about. He used to make a point of going, I had a really good reaction to him coming out. And I was like, well, what do you mean? He said, you basically sat there and just said, well, there you are, for about 2 minutes, and then nothing changed. And he said, it was literally like all of your files had updated and gone, this doesn't affect me in any way. There you go then. That was it. And apparently that was the best reaction I could have had, so that was fine. But he did used to make a point of saying that before he came out, we had slept together. But in the sense of we'd actually just slept together. Which was one of his most favourite gags. It's like, thanks, Andy. And I'm pretty sure that story got told at his funeral. Me and Andy have got this ongoing friendship. We'd seen Justice, and that was it. So they are the reasons I've chosen those two stories.
Right.
Now, the reason that it is a continuing story is that I continue to chat with Catherine as the years go by, and we write to each other, and I've got an outpouring from her fandom, and so is she. But things peter out, things change, people evolve. And then when I moved down here, and I mean, with living with my wife and everything's fine, it's like, oh, I just really miss those outpourings. And at that point, Andy says, that's my wife, Andy. She says, why don't you just podcast instead? You listen to podcasts. You could just have an outpouring for your fandom the way you used to have in the letters and with your friends. That way instead. So that resulted in me forming the Tin Dog podcast. And that's why basically I'm here and I've met you because of the long through line dating all the way back to Wall's End Adventure Roleplayers and me meeting my mate Andy Barber. So that's basically it. So Red Dwarf is a core thing in who I am, and it's responsible for where I am now in a roundabout kind of a way.
I didn't realise. Well, I didn't realise that Red Dwarf meant so much to you before we embarked on this.
Well, yeah,
thing.
Yeah. It doesn't. I've not really gone on about it. I mean, yeah. Whenever there's been a new episode on TV, I've always made a point of covering it on the Tin Dog, because I was watching it anyway, and I might as well chat about it. And let's face it, that is what my podcasts are for. They're me having a chat and going, "Hey, this was great," or "Oh, I didn't enjoy that." I'm not one of these, YouTubers who are just after hit clicks. I've got 20,000 down viewers and subscribers, and they all want to hear my random rants about what I hate right now. That's never been me. It's just like, hey, this is great. Do you agree? Are you on this with me? So yeah.
Yes, and I think Facebook threw up the picture of for some reason there wasn't a picture of me, but I was there. But that one of those early pictures of you at Hooverville, in the train shed, because that's where we met, isn't it? We met. We met through Hooverville. I mean, I guess we were aware of each other because we'd podcasted.
And at the time, there wasn't that many podcasters. I think you actually had most of the world's Doctor Who podcasters in that one shed at that time.
Red Dwarf. Okay, before we discuss the episodes, I messaged you partway through the month, and I said we've got to. There's a fact that I forgot to throw in. So I need to throw this in before I forget. So last year or the year before, I discovered that I have by 2 marriages, I am related to an extra from a Series 4 episode of Red Dwarf.
Okay.
So, my wife's cousin's husband's uncle.
Yeah.
So there's the 2 marriages. I'm married to my wife. My wife's cousin.
Oh, you haven't been married twice then? That's fine.
So I'm married to my wife. Her cousin's married to a guy whose uncle was the Dalai Lama wax droid in Meltdown.
In Waxworld.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and this came up in conversation where they were like, I can't remember what they said his name was, Uncle whatever. I'm sure people who actually know the minutiae of casting will know what the name of the guy was who played the Dalai Lama, because they're pretty much silent parts, aren't they, in that episode?
Okay, this is freaky. The idea of you saying somebody else who knows about more of casting than me.
But this is the thing. I find this with Jerry Anderson fandom is that I know a lot less about all the stuff that I found that I absorbed about classic Doctor Who. I didn't absorb about other things. So I don't know the minutiae of a lot of those things, and certainly not Red Dwarf.
Your brain's big, but it's not that big. It can't contain everything.
There's a scene in Justice that's very familiar to me because I had it translated into Russian when I lived in Russia.
Okay.
And this will link into Waiting for God as well. I think these are 2 very interesting episodes that we've got to talk about. So when I was there, we used to do these evenings called Dushevny Razgovor, which is Russian for soul talk. The idea of the soul, this kind of mystical, spiritual idea, it runs very deep in Russian culture. And we used to explore a theme through media. So we'd have a theme like love or death or friendship or whatever.
That does sound very Russian.
Yeah. And then we'd explore that through 3 or 4 pieces of media. So you'd have a poem or a song or a movie or whatever. And I can't remember what the theme was. Possibly it was justice. I don't know. But the scene where Rimmer is explaining to Lister how the justice field works, and he gets him to set the bed sheets on fire.
Yeah.
So that whole scene, I basically got one of my Russian colleagues to translate into Russian so that we could show it at this evening, because it was in Russian and English, so that obviously we could take part, because our Russian wasn't great, but the idea was you would invite Russian students who could participate either in English or Russian. So it's possibly I still have it somewhere, but that scene sticks very, very hard in my mind because I watched it over and over again as I was writing out the English dialogue and then I had to put the subtitles on. But I think you've picked 2 interesting episodes, and you've picked.
Hang on. Here's the important question.
Yes.
Did they laugh?
I don't remember. But I do seem to remember that. I think this is generally true. Humor is one of the last things that you get about a culture. They had, but certainly kind of big student get-togethers. They used to have these talent shows. And
linguistic humour, yes.
Yes.
But that's what Red Dwarf's got. It's got a lot of physical humour as well.
Well, so there is that, yes. So they had these talent shows, and there were certain skits that they would do, and I would be like, the slapstick in this is quite funny. There's clearly a whole other level of dialogue that I am not getting. So I don't know to what extent the humour would have translated. But I think it's interesting that you've picked 2 episodes which actually deal with some slightly weighty philosophical ideas. And I guess it strikes me that I suppose Red Dwarf has always done that.
Well, yeah. See, that's it. It sells itself as lowbrow. It sells itself as the underachiever, the boys from the dwarf, the sort of... I'm not even going to go down FHM readership kind of thing. It sells itself on that. But you've got some very, very intelligent cast, and you've got some very, very intelligent writing going on as well. But it's in disguise as lowbrow. For me, that's that. Sorry, it's not funny. It's not exciting, but it is how I feel. But so yeah, it's cleverer than it lets on. I think that makes sense. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. I've chosen 2 stories that speak to me. Obviously, I chose Justice just because I was there.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And like I said last time, my memory is cheating, and I've got some very specific memories of arriving, of jumping. Like I said last time, jumping up and seeing some turtles being made, and then watching the actual show being at one end, and then watching the bits on video, because Justice has got it's a very tightly scripted piece, as I've experienced when I've done the rewatch, and the actual Justice section's really small.
Yeah.
There's a big bit at the beginning which is dealing with space mumps, and the thawing out of the casket and the setting up of the narrative.
Yeah.
Then actually on Justice World, it's arrival, being sent to jail, getting out of jail, and then having to deal with the simulant.
Yeah.
Or droid or whatever it is. So the actual Justice bit of Justice is really quite small.
It is, yes.
But the bit that was on screen, not the bit that was like performed in front of us, was the actual the Justice computer telling that actually giving Rimmer the thing, and the trial. Those 2 bits were done live
on that sort of very sort of minimalist black set with the light from behind. That was...
That's the one,
It felt to me like we haven't got much budget at this point, and we need something
Well,
cheap to make the set work.
Yeah, because
I mean, it does work. It does work. I'm just saying, like, it from a production point of view, it feels quite cheap.
No. Here's a story that I remember from the time. Okay,
right.
So, Justice was on TV, and then a week later, my mum calls me down and says, I don't know how I saw this, but there was complaints on Points of View about Justice.
Yes.
And for those of you who aren't from another country or whatever, Points of View used to be a kind of feedback program where people would send in letters and either complain or praise the BBC. Okay, that was it.
Yeah.
And it used to be Barry Tuck, and then it was the woman who did what was it called? Anyway, Anne Robinson was it? I think she might have been doing it at the time. And people had complained that Red Dwarf was now using a laugh track rather than a real audience.
Oh, right.
And this was because, but I'd been in the audience, and this is the follow-on from what you were saying last time. Everyone in that place was at a convention. They were doing Red Dwarf live for us because we were fans. This is the 4th year of Red Dwarf. There wasn't a single ordinary member of the human race in that audience. We were all massive fans watching this show performed for us. That's why we were laughing so much.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it didn't sound like that sounded like a laugh track, because we were all just having a fabulous time. So I don't know if that's true, but I have an absolute concrete memory of it, of somebody complaining on Points of View about the laugh track, which didn't exist.
It's definitely, I've definitely seen that criticism online of the more recent stuff.
Yeah.
As well. Series 10, 11 and 12. And again, you're like, I was there. You know.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they do say, I think the one caveat that's been made is that in the edit they do occasionally move a laugh around. Right? You know. Occasionally they'll move a laugh somewhere so that the timing works better. Because there's certainly some moments I can't off the top of my head think where there are moments where an actor pauses. I mean, Chris Barry in particular, I think there's a few where he pauses for a laugh and he doesn't get it quite, and they kind of keep it in. And so there is that kind of that judgment on the part of the actors of kind of knowing that they're performing to a live audience.
Yeah.
And obviously, if they weren't, and it was just a laugh track pasted on the top, you wouldn't have those moments of them slightly misjudging the scale of the laugh. So what people are really complaining about is there's too much laughter. And are they kind of going, well, I didn't find it so funny, and they feel that that's what they're being kind of sort of conned into.
Yeah. They're going like, well, it was funny, but it wasn't that.
It wasn't that funny. Yeah. Well, if you were there in the live audience, you would have like I say. I mean, I don't think the more recent series they're not peak Red Dwarf. Like the peak of Dwarf is gone. You know.
Yeah.
We have to admit that, but to be there in the audience with those people, you know, was a special experience. And if you were that person on that night, you know, and that's the recording that they got, and that's what they're legitimately allowed to put out onto the TV.
Well, yeah.
Let's go chronologically.
Yeah, yes, let's do it.
It fits into this narrative that. And I'm so sorry. I've seen the first 10 minutes of The Promised Land. That was all I could fit in. I still haven't seen the whole of it.
It's fine.
But I can see immediately from watching the first 10 minutes that it is clearly a sequel to Waiting for God. But there is that sort of through line in Series 1 of setting up this idea of Lister's idea all along was that he wanted to go to Fiji with a cow and a sheep and breed horses, and Kachansky was going to ride the horses. You know, there's that sort of line that goes through the first couple of series and then sort of gets forgotten, really.
Because he's trying to make it back to Earth.
Yes.
And to fulfill a destiny. And that's, you're right. It's the driving force of that's what he wants. They're the dreams of a young man, but they're also they're a MacGuffin in a certain respect.
Yeah.
Because they're there to drive on the character until other things become his motivation.
Yes.
It's like with the steptoe and son thing that I kept harping on about. The motivation of Harold is to escape his dad, but setting up on his own, and then it's there is some motivation, but it's basically just survival. But you can't sell that to the audience, so he's just trying to. So yeah, I can see that. But yeah, that thing obviously goes into the religion. But on the waiting for God thing, I think it's what you've got is you haven't just got the cat religion thing, which I love, but you've also got Rimmer's religion, which is aliens, and you've also got the existential crisis of the toaster going on as well, because the toaster only exists for one thing, and that thing's not really needed, and so you've got it's important. All of the characters have got something going on. Obviously, the cat just exists in order to bring the story progressed.
Yes.
At this point, he isn't having that much of a religious moment because he doesn't believe that Cloyster the Stupid is Lister.
Yes.
Because there's, if you're God, why that face? It's
also the fact that the cat. What is it said? The cat is this child of the imbecile and the. How were his parents described? There's something in the imbecile, and so the cat is by his nature of being left behind on Red Dwarf, he is already sort of an outcast from the religion, isn't he? And I think it was interesting that you talked about Rimmer's religion. We did Thanks for the Memory last time, and obviously the minute that they're faced with a mystery, Rimmer's immediate response is it's aliens, right?
Yeah.
And again, that's a thing, and I can't remember how many times that happens, but that again feels like a first couple of series thing that Rimmer is always kind of, and then that is kind of when they do eventually meet Gelfs, who are. They're not aliens because they're genetically engineered life forms, but they are they fulfill the function of aliens in the Red Dwarf universe.
Of aliens, but they do it in such an elegant ways to not still be aliens because that's the point. The point of Red Dwarf is that there is no one else.
Yes, and anybody that they do meet,
there's just the mess we've made. Yes, and it just goes on.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Anybody that they do meet is a product of human technology.
Yeah.
So I like as I said last time, I like the first and second series probably just more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I think it's partly because it plays with these ideas.
I think the problem for me is how popular Polymorph was, because everyone adored the story so much that it became the blueprint for later stuff.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, we've seen Dwayne Dibley before. Yeah, I know you're all having loads of fun doing that, but no. Yeah, so... And it's a cracking story. I am just as responsible as everyone else for finding it a bit... it's a great story, but I don't want it to be the blueprint for everything, because I like the whole claustrophobic nothing going on. But you can only do that for so long. And like we said, there's 70-odd episodes.
Yeah.
And So I made a point of saying, if there's a Red Dwarf role-playing game, I must buy it. I must sell my stuff and buy it. Well, thanks, Richard, because you sent me the link saying there was one on Amazon. You can't get it. So I went on eBay, £100, and that's £100 I won't be spending. But I did do some research, and I found the PDF on Google after about 12 seconds searching. Apparently the company doesn't exist anymore, and it was out in 2002 or 2020. It's very old anyway.
It's very old, but it's also not from the heyday of Red Dwarf itself.
Well, that's it.
That's an interesting time for it to have come out.
It's actually set on the ship in its long form, and there's all of the prisoners and things like that mentioned as well. And it's a really well researched game. I mean, seriously, the manual is Everything's there, and there's episodes being mentioned, and I'm like, I can't read. Can I remember that one? Perhaps I do need a rewatch.
What is it about Waiting for God that you
It's
really love?
the religion thing. It's the way that it's like it just says everyone deep down has a hole in their soul that they're trying to fill with something, except Lister, weirdly, and they've all filled it with something that is a story that works for them. The cat race have taken what happened to them and turned it into myth. And yes, all right, science taken to a logical conclusion and it becomes magic, blah blah blah, because that he's held in stasis, which is him doing an eternal sleep and all that business. But it kind of spoke to me and went, yeah, it's fine. There's the best religious gag in Red Dwarf is the first page of the Bible being found when it says this is a work of fiction and there's a
To my dear Candy.
yeah, exactly. So the weird thing is you've remembered it. You've remembered the gag word for word, and I haven't. I've just remembered the essence of it. So anyway, it does speak to me on a personal level. So yeah.
Yes. Well, I think it's. I mean, we've said in the past that we really need to do just a chat about worldview, religion, philosophy, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
And we've never got around to doing that. And I mean, I think anybody who's been listening to us for any length of time will know that we land in different places.
We do, but
as far
everyone
as
goes on about, how can you possibly have morals and be an atheist? And it's like, how can you not? And it goes like that. And you've got a world. You seem in the past you've mentioned that you think that moral coding has a basis in religion as well. And I can see both sides because I studied religion quite intently. I did it to A level, but that's because I was trying to get my head round what I thought was my own personal worldview, and that's I arrived in a different location, but I still have the facts. Like I've said in the fact, it's like being a Star Trek fan and knowing shed loads, but you don't. It's weird, but the facts are still in there.
Yes, yeah. Well, and I think you can't understand the world, without understanding. I mean, I've been thinking about this recently, and I think one of the disservices we do in education is by calling religious education.
Yes.
I think we should call it something more like worldview education, because that would force everybody to confront the fact that they have one. Because my recollection of religious education was that there was obviously the Christian stuff, because historically where our nation is at. Yeah. But also there was plenty of we are a multicultural society now, and even within my school there were adherents certainly of Islam, probably Hinduism, I don't know, other things as well, I suspect. And certainly where I live now and where my daughter goes to school, there's a whole breadth of cultures and religions. So, and I think that's all helpful. But you could, if you went into those lessons as an atheist, you could easily come away with the idea that religion is a sort of bolt-on to life, which I don't think that's true at all. I think what would be more helpful to say is that everybody has a worldview. Everybody has a certain set of presuppositions about life, the universe, everything. What living a good life is, what morality is, and it's worth us everybody exploring. Well, where do those ideas come from? Where did you get the ideas that you have about what is good and what is bad, and on what measure are you judging other people's worldviews?
That makes a lot of sense.
Because there's that line at the end of the episode where Lister talks about religion being people using religion as an excuse to be crappy to each other or something.
Well, yeah,
something along those lines. And I'm not sure that's quite right. I mean, I think that's true of people. Yeah, there are certainly people who kind of go, I'm going to use this worldview within which I find myself to manipulate other people for my own ends. I think that's true. I'm not dismissing that. But I think most people do act on the basis of what they think is right and good and true. and other people look at that and go, "You're being a crappy person," and that person is not knowingly being a crappy person. They're not kind of going, "I'm using religion to be crappy." They're going,
No.
"I am trying to follow my religion," and other people are going to look at that from the outside and go, "That's terrible."
No, I think
in the way that you have the whole religious wars about the colour of the hats.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that comes back to the Gulliver's Travels, which end of the egg they break thing. It's just something that people can fixate on for the argument. But that's what it is. I think it comes down to an innate need for people to feel superior to other people. And the hat rack that they put their different coloured hats on is we call that one religion. It's not faith. It's a very different can of worms with its own worms. But religion for me is just being used by too many people to cause too many issues. And also it's the one thing that you can't argue someone away from. If someone's going, "Hey, don't cross that road, there's cars," you've got empirical proof, you've got evidence, you can go, that's fair enough. But if someone's going, "Don't eat that sandwich because it contains X," and you say, "Why? Religion?" You can't, it's difficult to argue an opposing point of view, because what you end up becoming is against their religion. And you're like, that's not kind of what I was on about. I was just going, nice sandwich. And again, I don't see there being a way out of it other than hoping that people eventually arrive at for me, an accepted wave of atheism eventually. I think that the people in the West are about 80 years ahead of hopefully for me, in front of the rest of the world on their atheist wave, so that everyone reaches the point where it's like, there was a thing on Radio 4 where someone was talking about, in Northern Ireland, do you perceive yourself as Catholic or Protestant? And the vast majority of this current generation see themselves as neither. Right? And that is going to help remove a sectarian divide of which colour hat you're involved in.
Yes.
Much easier than someone going, "I'm wearing orange and I must march down your street and just wind you up because I feel superior to you. Yes. And here's my excuse because I've got this religious baggage."
Yes.
So
yes, and
that would be my argument for the atheism thing. Yeah.
No, and I suppose there's two things. There's the actual beliefs. Like, do you believe that there's a God or not? And I think I broadly agree with you in that there are very few people that you can argue and persuade. Like some people do seem to have experiences where their only objection to there being a God is some kind of intellectual argument. Yeah. There's a scientific thing that they're like, well, I can't reconcile these two. And if you could kind of have a discussion with them and kind of reconcile those two, then they could be like, oh, okay, maybe I can make a step towards faith. Or the other way around. Yeah, there are people who go the other direction, certainly. But I think
because there are people who do the whole science thing where they just go, all right, okay, so in this universe, God's created the devil as well. So, and then he sent him, and then they get involved in the logistics. The way that Doctor Who fans get involved in unit dating, they get hooked on the minutiae of things that people have said hundreds of years ago when things weren't as clear or obvious, and they've gone, right, those are the facts. That's what we're stuck with. That's what we have to go with. And you're going, but we can see with our own eyes that that's not the case. And therefore, and they're like, well, is religion all nonsense or is it all important or what? And because I get it. I get that through religion, we've ended up with some good things. We've ended up with a printing press. We've ended up with art because you had somebody to pay for the art, and eventually art's developed, and that's become part of the culture and so on. So without a religion, lots of other things that make us us wouldn't be around. So I'm not.
Yes.
But
I think I would go further.
More trouble, though. Yeah.
I would go further than that and say that if you have grown up in the West, then you're thinking about all these fundamental questions, whether you like it or not, is underpinned by centuries of Christian thinking. And we are in an interesting place historically in that we're sort of 200 years or so post-Enlightenment, where you had a bunch of philosophers who were like, we want to try and keep the fruits of that, but without the theological underpinnings, because we don't believe in the miracles anymore.
Yeah.
You know? And so you have, I mean, recently, just as an example, in the last few weeks, Richard Dawkins was interviewed and very much kind of pushed this idea of being a cultural Christian whilst saying all the religious stuff is nonsense, basically.
Yes.
The question that you have to ask is, can you have the fruit without the roots? You know, like if you take away all of the religious beliefs that underpin our society, does it eventually fall apart? And we're not there yet. Like, that process has been going on for a few hundred years, and it's difficult to kind of know. I would say I don't think you can ultimately have the fruit without the roots.
No, but I'm not seeing it as fruit. I'm seeing it as like as a table. With Christianity, they built the table, they built the stationery, they built everything else. But now that we've got a table, we could build another table, and we can build stationery now because we've reached the point where we can do these things. And
so in this analogy,
what is
the table? What's the table is
the society, is our approach to stuff, is the ability to create art, is the ability to communicate with each other over distances, is the ability to write, that kind of thing.
Right.
So yeah, it's a cultural point. But now that we're here, do we really need to be going? I mean, we can be grateful. That's really not a problem. But do we need to constantly go back and do that? Right. So anyway, right. I know we are pushed for time, and I hate to step away from this. I genuinely do, because this is it. The rest of the time I'm just at work, right? So we've got these stories, and like I said, Red Dwarf itself is more highbrow than it makes out.
Yes.
Excuse me, because it makes out that it's just a very working class thing. But for me, that is the working class as well. As the working class is considerably more highbrow than it lets on. My dad, worked in the docks, and yet I know for a fact he's seen a few operas and enjoyed the hell out of them. It's never as clear cut as you think. And obviously Dave's meant to be a slob, but at the end of Justice, he does this massive speech about, everything. And then they just say, thank God, weirdly, Kat says it, when he falls down a pit and hurts himself.
Yeah.
So they have to go for the practical gags. I don't know where I'm going with this, and I'm sorry.
No, I think he is a fascinating character. Because it is made a point of a couple of times throughout the series that he's an atheist.
Yeah.
But he has that. You're right. He has that monologue at the end of the episode, and he does. Well, I suppose there's that. There's the Inquisitor in series 5, where it's dealing with some very interesting philosophical ideas that this droid goes throughout humanity and judges people, and he judges that Rimmer and the cat can stay. They couldn't have been anything else, and therefore they get to carry on with their lives. But that Crichton and Lister could have been better by some what's the word?
Twist of
subjective.
Fate? Okay.
Some subjective standard of good that the droid has come up with, and there's the idea that yes, he's a slob, but he's a slob who is capable of so much more, but the circumstances of his life have meant that he is the last human on his own and that is the situation that provides the comedy that we see. But it's the implication that, like, yes, if he had applied himself differently, he could have been great, again, by some subjective standard, you know. And again, it's coming down to questions of, like, well, actually, what is a good life? Like, how do we judge whether Dave Lister lives a good life or not?
Yeah.
You know, and the show seems to come down, in that episode in particular, seems to come down in the kind of the thing of, like, well, this droid is certainly bad. You know, the idea that he set himself up to kind of judge people is wrong, and that Lister's life is still a worthwhile life because he's a human and not because of anything that he does. Which, again, I think is a very Christian idea. But anyway, we could just keep talking about the philosophy of Red Dwarf all night, but we can't.
I can feel a book in this. I really can.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah. Okay, so there is one actor from Doctor Who that I saw.
Yes. So did I.
And it's the old man in the religion.
Cat priest.
It's the cat priest. Yeah. Now, I did look him up, and he's called Noel Coleman.
Noel Coleman, yes. Noel Coleman, who played General Smythe in the War Games.
Yes.
Quite memorably so.
Yeah. Now, according to IMDb,
yes,
he is also the narrator on Captain Pugwash, which I took quite badly because I thought Captain Pugwash's voices were all done by the bloke who did the Dalek's voice.
Yes. Peter Hawkins, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I've not gone away and found out, but I'm wondering if there's a narrator at the beginning and then Hawkins does all of the characters, or
or whether IMDb's wrong.
Be wrong.
The internet might be wrong.
Because let's face it, this is animation. We really should know this.
Well, we should, but equally, I'm gonna Noel Coleman. Let's see. Does yes, Wikipedia, and there's a citation as well.
Yeah.
From his obituary. There you go.
But I was like, what?
But yeah, no, he shares a birthday with my father. Yes, no, I was. The War Games was one of the first Doctor Who stories I watched. Now, bearing in mind, I read a lot of Doctor Who Target books before I ever saw any, but certainly the War Games was one of the very early ones that I watched, and his performance in particular, because he is the first villain before you realise that there are more villains above him. He is the first villain of that piece, and he's so good at being that character that when I came across him in Red Dwarf, I was like, "No, is that? Oh yeah, no, that is him. That is him." And have you seen the Smeg-Ups?
No.
You have to watch.
If I have, it's a hell of a long time ago.
You have to watch the Smeg-Ups because there's one line where he just cocks it up over and over and over again, where he's doing the whole thing where he's listing all of the things that he's done. Like, I wore the custard scene, I rejected coolness and embraced slobbiness, you know, and you can tell he is entirely baffled by the situation that he's been placed in.
Yes.
He has no idea what this thing is that he's in. And yet, he's great.
He sells it really well.
He sells it really well. But yeah, no, if you can track down the Series 1 Smeg-Ups,
I'm sure they're on
the DVD.
YouTube somewhere.
They're on the DVD. It is worth watching because it's just hilarious watching him try and get round.
Yes.
Also, why is his hand black?
Oh, I always assumed it was because he was a tabby. He was descended from a sort of cat that had patches.
I was trying to work that out.
That was all I ever assumed, was that he was descended from a cat.
He was descended from a tabby cat.
Yeah, different types of cat, not a tabby. You know what I mean? Like they're a cat that you call in socks and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's answered my question.
There we go. I just assumed that was it straight off. So now we've kind of messed up the whole your turn, my turn thing.
Well, actually, before we go on to that, do you want? I haven't done the research. Do you want, off the top of your head, to run through any Doctor Who actors that you know have been in Red Dwarf that we haven't covered in any of our episodes?
I do not want to do that.
Well, I'm sure if you Google a list, there is a list of people what have been in both.
I did Google
there's been a lot,
and I couldn't find a list.
You couldn't find one? Okay.
No, but to be fair, I was at work and I was supposed to be doing really important things. So
yes. Anyway, yes. Well, yes. It's yes. This was my thing. And we split it into two parts. So, although this was your week to talk about your episodes, it's still only fair that you get to choose what we do next time. So, this is May. What will we be doing in June, Michael?
Star Cops.
Oh!
Yeah. A specific episode, and I believe it's called Little Green Men. And I've found it, and I've even uploaded it to my bit of YouTube. So that if anyone does want to watch it beforehand, they can watch that one thing. Although you can track it down anywhere. They're just everywhere. But it's a specific episode called Little Green Men.
So I have never seen Star Cops.
This is prime rib, best of the bunch Star Cops, this particular episode.
Give us the quick, for those who haven't heard of Star Cops, give us the quick rundown on it.
So it's near future, 1980s, late 80s, early 90s TV series. It had one season. And
of how many episodes?
Of, I believe, 9. It was a weird number.
Okay.
But I'll know all of this for next time.
Written by Chris Boucher,
yes. Now,
who wrote for Doctor Who.
Yes.
And was the script editor on Blake 7, right?
Exactly. But this is hard sci-fi. This isn't your, there's some aliens out there. In fact, the whole point is there are no aliens. It's near Earth orbit. And all of the science is pure. Big Finish have brought everybody back, and they've made a series now, which I'm loving.
Oh, and you've picked the final episode?
Yes. But that's because they absolutely got it right by this point.
Right.
The teething troubles, the zero gravity, all of the stuff that looked a bit chonky, not here. This is a classic, proper... Echoes of Arthur C. Clarke, proper sci-fi story, and it's about the police force investigating something on Moon Base, because that's how they got around the gravity issue, and I don't want to spoil it because that's it. So I will send you a link as soon as we're done, and you will have that. But this is the last one. If you'd rather we did episode 1, I'm quite willing to do that.
No. I'm happy to dive in on that. And it's definitely a series that I have heard
and they're all standalone
many
stories.
things about.
Every single one of them is a standalone.
And directed by Graham Harper, so that should be good.
Yeah, I was wondering why this one looked so good. That'll be why.
Because he was good at what he did. I mean,
yes.
I think he's retired now, isn't he? He's still alive, but I think he's retired now.
Is he? Oh, I'm surprised.
I'm assuming he's retired.
I thought he'd just go on forever.
Anyway.
Right, so that's my time for next time.
Written by Chris Boucher, directed by Graham Harper. We will talk about that next time. Yeah, as I say, I have no connection to it other than being told it's good. You can tell us why you're a fan of Star Cops.
Oh, yeah. I certainly
And yeah, we could have said a lot more about Red Dwarf.
We could.
We really
and
could
perhaps
have.
one day we will.
We're not going to rewatch the whole thing, Michael. That's just
we're not. We're not.
But
we could. I'm sure people could write in and say which episodes they want us to talk about. That would be different.
True. We could open that up to.
Yeah. You know what? If we were in it for the money, we could do things like a Patreon exclusive.
We could.
But we're not. We're here for the chat.
It's difficult enough fitting these in once a month.
It really is.
The pressures of running a Patreon.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I will sign off and leave the final word to you as ever, Michael.
Well, be seeing you.